In terms of Pulse, just kind of price performance and how we could see this cycle, not really taking the SEC thing into consideration or anything, just now focusing on PulseChain and the actual good stuff that's going to help move us forward. What do you think the possible plan could be for any interested parties or certain whales that may have, 170,000 Ethereum or other interest in buying this ecosystem up? I'm wondering what your thoughts are, because last cycle, which you were there for the entire thing, obviously Ewok, but Hex really started to pump hard a little bit after Ethereum hit its first all-time high. It was Hex was more of a laggard to Ethereum at that point, and then we've talked about this many times in this ecosystem, Hex, PulseChain, whatever, the Richard Heart tokens, that they have their own like little moment in the sun, which Richard obviously craves because all the attention is on his ecosystem. So that happened with Hex in 2021 after Ethereum hit, I think, what Richard believed was going to be its high. We saw Hex do really, really well, do that whole run up to 53, 56 cents, whatever. Now, he may not have thought this was going to happen, but he did call the double top, obviously. And then Ethereum actually got a little bit higher than it did the first time in the cycle, went up to 4,800 eventually. So I'm wondering from you on a timeline, kind of just broad brushes over the course of this year, is there a case? We just talked a little bit earlier at the top of the show about like altcoins, how some could still run going into 2026, or ones could run really in that last 60 days at the end of the year, even if Bitcoin looks like it's already topped off. Could we be seeing that from this ecosystem? Could we be seeing PulseChain on, I don't want to call it like a delayed bull season of its own, but kind of you're in the spotlight, you're the star of the show. Bitcoin has already hit all-time highs. All these other things have popped off. And then PulseChain has its own season where it is the star of crypto, essentially, because we did see that with Hex. I mean, we saw it September of 21. 56 cents, number 3 by market cap in the world. Only Nomics, of course, actually showed that at the time. But could we see something like that? What do you think about the time frame and Richard's propensity to want to be, the star that everybody's paying attention to?
Yeah, I see it. I mean, depending on what happens, we can't assume or hope that it will. But I can imagine a lot of value coming into PulseChain once Ethereum does its thing. It's kind of hard to not think that would play a big part. Now, even if it doesn't move, or even if it doesn't buy a bunch, even if it just bridges over that value, that increases a lot of things as well. So, yeah, there is somebody who does like to be the star of the show, who wants glory, who wants appreciation, who wants, the kudos that go with it. I can totally see that happening. But again, he's also smart enough to not just throw money to make things run up so that people can sell. So I do think it would be strategically placed along the way by wallets that we're probably not watching. There is that Railgun protocol out there that can allow people to use wallets that no one knows where it came from, kind of thing, that aren't being watched and aren't being tracked. So it's not going to be a big, hey, look, this is me kind of thing. But you are going to see it delayed. It will do its own thing, I think, after the cycle, so that it is, the spotlight is on this ecosystem, and say, hey, here's what we can do. Look over here. And Hexgirl said it. That was my next point. Right. If PDI does happen to peg, that's another story in itself. That like gets
the
attention.
Story. Yeah.
Well, it's not the. I mean, it's not the story, but it's
the story.
It's part of the whole thing. Of look what I made. Look what is happening over here. We took a stable coin and pegged it without pegging it. Like it was what 0.000 whatever it was. And look what we've done. that just kind of adds to the whole thing. There's been many opportunities. Richard has had several opportunities, even in the Christmas video, to denounce this thing,
Yeah.
and it still hasn't been. And for me, he's been active on Twitter. He's been or X, whatever you want to call it. He made the video. He talked about a lot of things, but he still hasn't yet said, "I have nothing to do with this," or hinted in any way that people should be careful
Right.
of it.
Which he
And I think,
would. I mean, that's his
yes,
whole MO. Yeah.
well, yes. I mean, he likes to warn people, right? When things are not looking good, when there's bad things out there, he's going to try to help people, just like he did with Luna and Celsius, and those protocols when he did it then. So because it hasn't been done yet, I mean, I'm just increasingly more bullish on that he may have something to do with this, or he is behind it in, or he knows it's going on and he's playing along. You know what I mean? He's assisting with the whole thing, whether it's the Maria, the 414, whatever it is. He could realize, and then they could be possibly pulling some strings together. So, yeah, this is another thing too, that when the spotlight is on, I think it's really going to be, look what we did kind of thing. So
You didn't even mention too, he just made that big tweet last night about the postcard competition that's going on
yeah,
right now.
well, these guys have been talking about that in the chat here as well. So I
Well,
don't.
and my point isn't necessarily about that contest, which is cool, and I voted on it and stuff. My point about it was Richard, throughout his tweet where he had like a very long, comprehensive list of brainstorming ideas, had multiple things like intimating a stable coin. Like it was clear that that was part of some of the things that he was pitching and some of the things that he said.
Yeah,
Silent Schiller, good point. Richard wants bragging rights of designing things that do 10,000x from their bottoms. He's not going to completely 100% transparent, completely be transparent with his idea behind how he will reward those who stayed. I've been saying this exact thing for a while. I couldn't agree with you more. And
yep,
Ewok, on the other hand, thinks that RH is going to come out and beat his chest and say, I was behind P died. Here's what I did, and all these things. I don't think he's ever going to take credit for it. I mean, he'll brag about it. He already has bragged about it. He's bragged that has happened on the chain. I don't think he's going to come out and say anything about anything that he may or may not have had to do with it or anything. And obviously, I'm just messing with you, Ewok. But yeah, I think it's very interesting that this is just happening this way, organically
yeah,
like this. Yeah.
yep. And I think it's better that way. I really do. I think it's better that way when you get enough people believing behind it. And then maybe we find out later or whatever, uh, you know, it adds to the mystique a little bit of it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.